Thank you for reminding. Okay, so I will say it again. Hi everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar. It's the first webinar on 2025 that is organized under Impact Market Romania. My name is Catalina Radu, and I'm the founder of Impact Market Romania, which is the first consultancy locally that is helping companies go through the B Corp certification process. And if you did not heard about the B Corp before, I'm going to give you just few hints, and also I will let our speakers today give you more hints. But to start with, B Corp certification is perhaps one of the toughest, most rigorous certifications, perhaps the gold medal in certifications in sustainability that you can have as a company. And once you have it, it demonstrates the high social and environmental performance of your company. So it's, as you can imagine, difficult to get. You need to demonstrate your performance. You need to have a lot of data and a lot of community work and a lot of environmental work, and everything should fit in place. And today's guests are coming from a B Corp certified company. I'm very pleased to have with me today Kirsten Bach. She is the Chief Future Officer of PTHR. If you're asking yourself what PTHR is People and Transformational HR. Yeah, I had to write it down, not to forget. And my second guest is Catalina Ticau. She is the Chief People and Performance at PTHR. And PTHR, ladies and gentlemen, it's a certified B Corp, or should I say a recertified B Corp, because you first certified in 2021 and you recertified 3 years later with a very impressive score. And I was so impressed with your mission and with your vision and with the things that you're doing that I decided to organize this webinar, as I said, the first in 2025, and to give you ladies the floor to discuss the big question that I have for you, which is how did you come to certify as a B Corp, being a consultancy in the HR and organizational design, organizational transformation business. And I think it's not that there are not many companies like yours in this particular field that have decided to become B Corp. But first, let's maybe have a short presentation with Kirsten and Catalina. Who wants to start? Be my guest.
I can go first. Thank you so much, Corina, for the very nice introduction and for the invitation to share our story with your community. I'm Catalina, as you said. I'm leading on people and performance and innovation at PTHR, and I'm really passionate about self-management and decentralized organizations, transparent systems. So a lot of my work is in that space internally at PTHR, but also with our clients. And together with Kirsten, we've been leading the B Corp certification and recertification at PTHR. We actually started this process back in 2020, even though we got their certification in 2021. So we'll share more about why the process was longer for us initially. And in the last years, we've also worked with clients to help them in this journey and other sustainability initiatives that they have. And I became a B leader last year when I did the training with B Lab Europe, and that's when our communication grew. And I'm based in Brașov in Romania, where PTHR is a remote working company. So I'm lucky to be the representative in Romania. And I'll pass it on to Kirsten for her intro.
Thank you so much, Kata. And also, again, thank you, Karina, for having us here. Really delighted to be here talking to you all. So I'm Kirsten Buck. I'm Chief Features Officer at PTHR, and I've been with PTHR for just over 5 years. It's been a really exciting journey, and becoming a certified B Corp has certainly been part of that. So my role is very much focused on organization design and development and working with companies to reach their desired future state. And more we've brought in purpose and sustainability to that, which is something that's really close to my heart. So I'm based in Aberdeen in Scotland. I was in London when I began working with PTHR, but the brilliant thing about our team is we work predominantly remotely. So I'm just thrilled that I can still do what I love, even though, well, I've only actually met Catalina once, even though I feel like I know her. Yeah, and that's my introduction.
And we have, let's say, a special hidden guest with us today. I might say the very founder of PTHR, Barry Teams. Thank you for joining us in the background.
Thank you, Karina. Great to be here. So I'm not here to spy or interfere with Kata and Kirsten. Our B Corp certification and recertification was all down to them. So they're the experts in the room. I'm just here to support and cheerlead.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Barry. But it's wonderful, as I said before, it's wonderful to see founders joining the discussion and being part of this big transformation also for your company as you transform other companies as well. So, ladies, I would like to give the floor to you. I know that you have some slides prepared for us so that we could understand better what is your company doing. How did you become B Corp certified? Even the thought of let's go through the certification process can be scary sometimes. And how did you manage to continue and to be successful in this very rigorous process?
Great. I can share my screen so we can show you some slides that we prepared, but I think I'll need permission from you.
You have it. You have it.
Let me try now. Perfect. Yes. One moment.
Perfect.
Move this window. Hopefully you can see it. Is it loading for everyone? Great. So I'll pass the virtual microphone to Kirsten for the first part of our presentation.
Sure, thanks a lot again, Kata. So PTHR, People in Transformational HR, but we'll use the acronym PTHR going forward. We were established in 2012 by Perry, who's sitting here, which is lovely, with these audacious dreams and our mission, creating better business for a better world. So you'll see as we go through how closely linked that is to the B Corp mission. So there was no question over whether we would try and certify or not. And within that, our purpose is very much to transform teams and the way they operate to help people flourish in their work. Over the last 12 years, our team has taken different shapes and it's grown to how we are now. So we're a core team of 6 with also a team of collaborators. And we do have a number of accolades, and Perry specifically has some, which he's rather modest on. But just to highlight a few of those, Perry's a TEDx speaker, LinkedIn Learning instructor, 2 times published author, and currently writing his 3rd book as we speak today. And Perry's been ranked by peers 5 times in HR's most influential thinkers list, and #1 in 2022. And since then, he's been in the Hall of Fame. And as a group, we have a number of accolades as well. So we're a 4-day week employer, which was actually a really key point in gaining some extra points for our B Corp certification, a living wage employer. And amongst all of those, we do actually say our proudest collective achievement to date is becoming a certified B Corp. And then on the next slide, we thought we'd share with you our principles. So how we work as a team, we're very much guided by these 8 principles you can see here. So the work we do, we're really determined to be about more than profit. So thinking about John Elkington's triple bottom line, people, planet, and profit, that's something we strive to do. We're also really influenced by more autonomous, aligned, and agile ways of working. So thinking about a principle of self-determination. And I know, Kata, you spoke about that being something that's really close to your heart. Justice and belonging. So looking at DE&I and creating more inclusive places of work with kind leadership at the core. we quite often use and are influenced by design and systems thinking. So taking a much more holistic systems-based approach to interventions with teams so that they're long lasting. Everything we do is with much exploration and curiosity. So we're adaptive, we think fast, and with all the challenges that are going on in the world more and more, we really think that we'll keep this principle for a very long time. Learning as work is something that we have ingrained in our culture, and I'll talk a little bit more about that one later on. Applied psychology, so really using organizational psychology practices to influence and enable us to create people's positive contributions to work in a way that best suits them. And really understanding energy and creating workplaces that have well-being instilled in them. So there's respect and care and compassion so that we feel energized in what we do. And we thought we'd just give you a flavor of the size and scale and types of clients that we've worked with. So we are small, but we believe we're mighty. So we've worked with startups through to multinationals, not-for-profits. We're always really happy to work with not-for-profits and public sector and also private sector. So a few that you might recognize, the NHS, absolute massive organization that we have over here in the UK. We've worked with NHS Trust, Raiffeisen Bank might be one that you're familiar with, and also brands like Pandora and then Personio, of course, which is connected to HR. A little bit about the B Corp movement, but I know, Karina, you've also mentioned some of this, but the B Corp movement has grown massively in the last 4 or 5 years, but it's actually been established for quite a while, almost 20 years. So in 2006, B Lab, the not-for-profit that certifies B Corps, was established by some Americans who really believed that business can be used as a force for good and challenging all models that were in place already. So looking at long-term prosperity, looking at giving back to local communities, so less extraction and more regenerative ways of working. Now, there are some tangible measured benefits as to why to become a B Corp. So things like improved employee engagement, increased innovation, and above all else, better performance measured against your peers. As I mentioned, the B Corp network really has expanded. So now there's over 9,500 companies across the globe that are B Corp certified in 102 countries, and I believe it spans over 160 industries. And something really nice is you connect virtually on what's called the Beehive once you become certified, and you can see there are others in industries that you're operating in, and you can share best practice amongst them. I think there's some stats on the next slide for both the UK and B Lab Europe, and the growth and the projected growth is really quite similar. So we could only find the statistics up until 2023. We think the 2024 ones will be published sometime soon. But in the UK, and actually similarly in Europe, the number of certified B Corps has almost doubled in the last 2 years. That's absolutely fantastic. So we really think that if you're considering going for a certification, the time is now. And connecting it to HR and people professionals, we see lots of data out there suggesting that younger generations, in particular Gen Z and millennials, in Deloitte's Future of Work survey, for example, there are more and more being influenced by and choosing purpose-less brands, and they're making firm decisions on who they won't work for if they aren't socially impactful and environmentally conscious organizations. So we started PTHR, we started our B Corp journey in January 2020. And in the next 40 minutes or so, we're going to try and take you from there to where we are now. So I'll pass over to Kata for a bit.
Thank you, Kirsten. And thank you for the wonderful introduction. And as Kirsten said, we were really excited to join this growing movement. So we worked through our certification in 2020, but of course the pandemic started. We had other priorities, but also the interest in the B Corp movement increased quite a lot. So our process for getting certified was quite long. We got our certification in September 2021, and we were really happy to recertify last year in 2024 with an increased score. So We'll take you through the details of our process, try and highlight a little bit some of the areas that were really important for us, and try to make some connections with the work that we do as well as HR and OD professionals, but also working with HR and OD professionals in other companies. And as Kirsten mentioned, this was really a team effort for PTHR. Like everyone got involved, everyone was contributing, and the excitement was really big when we got it. And I think for us, it was a really interesting experience, even preparing for this webinar right now, to reflect on the last 5 years being part of this community and trying to understand what's more relevant to share with the group today. So this is how the dashboard, part of the dashboard, looks like internally for us on the BIA, the B Impact Assessment. And we wanted to highlight a little bit the areas that we scored highest and that are very relevant for HR and OD professionals, as we mentioned, but also zoom in the operations score and the impact business model score. Because there are these two separate categories that are part of these 5 sections. And looking at impact business model, so basically what B Corp defines as impact business model is how you bake a positive impact into your core structure. So having a business that by design has a positive impact socially or environmentally. So, for example, if the product or the service that you deliver has by design this kind of impact, and we were happy to qualify for 4 of these impact business models, and we know that's quite unique. Most of the companies have 1 or 2 or 3, and we were really excited to work on all these 4 areas. So Mission Lock is an impact business model that's part of the governance section. This is available only for certain countries. In the UK is mandatory, like you can change your articles of association, but I know that in Romania this isn't an option. Design to Give, this is one of the impact business models in the community section. And we'll talk a little bit about this later to give you more details about how this came to life for us. And then education and support for purpose-driven enterprises. That is basically our core business. So education through the trainings and workshops that we deliver for our clients, and supporting purpose-driven enterprises. So as Kirsten mentioned, a big part of our clients are charities, but also other B Corp organizations. So they all fit this category of purpose-driven enterprises. And we wanted to celebrate the fact that in our recertification, we got a 5th impact business model. So even if we started with a small score right now, we will be growing this area of the business. So the impact improvement, this impact business model, is specifically dedicated to ARC, our first spin out that Kirsten will be sharing more about later because it's her baby. And going back to the 5 areas, and the 6th one is the disclosure questionnaire. Basically, the B Impact Assessment is a free tool for measuring impact, what organizations can measure. And what we wanted to highlight is that this is a free tool, so you can go through the BIA and measure and track your impact and find ways to improve the impact that you're having in the world without, even if you don't want to become a B Corp. So it's a really useful tool by design. So even if you don't want to, there is a fee that you need to pay if you want to be part of the community, but if you don't want to get there, even this first step of using the BIA can be really useful for companies. We really like that it's connected to other frameworks. It's connected to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So for some of the questions, you see what connections they have with those areas. And of course, very relevant for the ESG framework, so environment, social, and governance. We wanted to zoom in on these three areas that are most important for us, where we scored highest. That doesn't mean that the other two are not relevant, but we scored lower, and those are actually the areas that we're going to focus on in these following years to try to improve on in those directions as well. We are a company with a minor environmental footprint because we're virtual. We don't have a physical office. So a lot of the questions in the environmental section weren't so relevant for us. They are more relevant for other bigger companies. But we thought that these three are particularly relevant for the conversation today. And again, very connected with HR, people, professionals, organization design. So to take them one by one, just to give you some examples on what was useful for us to look at when going through these sections. So when talking about governance, we're looking at the systems, the policies, the practices, the whole structure of the organization, and zooming in into the mission, understanding how's the decision-making process, how transparent the company is. And especially for us, it was interesting to evaluate how we do on all these levels and what kind of practices we can add even further to improve how we operate. So it's looking at mission engagement, ethics, transparency, governance metrics, and the mission log, the impact business model that I mentioned earlier. These are not all the questions. There are several others. I just wanted to highlight some examples that were insightful for us. And what's really important to mention is that this can be a really nice conversation starter because you don't have to stop here. If you look at the governance of a company, you can start talking about mission, values, understand if they're well defined, if you want to change anything, and go even higher than the standard that B Corp is setting. They are just like giving some hints and some directions that are useful to measure and that are setting the standards. We wanted to also like share with you an example just to understand that not all questions are open-ended. For some of them, you need to select from the options that they give you. But yes, examples of questions like how does your company support internal management and good governance? They give you some options, but you can also add some other details. For the workers section, this is particularly relevant for HR people because it covers everything about the workforce. And for us, it was very important to zoom in into this section because we were right at the beginning of being a larger team back in 2020. And it really helped us understand what are the areas that we need to work on. So for example, the living wage accreditation that Kirsten mentioned at the beginning, we got that after going through the BIA and understanding what are the benchmarks in different sections. So you'll see that's mentioned here also, like compensation policies and practices, what kind of benefits people get. We also like that started the conversation for us internally. What kind of benefits do we want to have at PTHR? And of course, professional development, employee reviews, so looking at the performance. So it really covers all the basics. But again, like I was saying earlier, I feel like it's a really important conversation starter to see what else you want to do within the organization. And to share an example that is, again, very relevant for us here. How does your company engage and empower workers? At PTHR, as we mentioned, we are a self-managed organization, and we do have open book management, and we were excited to see that, again, this aligns with B Corp standards. And because we are an open book management company, we have all the other processes and systems in place of being able to contribute to the decision-making process, having clear and regular feedback sessions, and having a clear performance system. So again, this is just one of the examples of the questions that we can find in the BIA. And the third area that, again, we scored high and it's very important for our business is the community one. And again, looking at the impact that we want to have in the community, diversity and inclusion, so female management, female directors, if what percentage of your purchases were from companies that are majority owned by women or individuals from underrepresented populations. I think this is a really interesting one that really got us thinking, who are our suppliers? Again, back in 2020, we didn't have a very clear list of who they are. We started working with different companies when the time was right, but we didn't have some clear set of filters that we wanted to use when selecting our suppliers. And this was a nice trigger for us to do that. So to create that list, to understand who are our significant suppliers, and to start looking for alternatives if we saw that they don't really align with our principles. So it really helped us change the way we see the relationship with some of our suppliers. Again, looking at civic engagement and giving as well. So the work that we do pro bono and the donations that we do to find a good tracking system for all of that and see how that fits within the larger picture. And the question that I wanted to give as an example here is, again, the one that qualified us for the design to give impact business model, because we commit to donating 5% of our work like through pro bono services and projects. So we formalized this commitment. We were doing this before, and even Perry, before deciding to have a larger team, he was constantly doing this, but never did it as like a formalized commitment and tracking this. So what we did, I think this was a challenging one for us because we had to look back at our records and understand how much we allocated to pro bono services, did that tracking. We were happy to see that we're reaching the expectations of B Corp standards. So we were able to qualify for this specific impact business model. So now I'll pass it back on to Kirsten to give you some examples of some of the practices that we used at PTHR throughout these years and helped us with both certification and recertification.
Thanks, Kata. So just to build on that and keep talking about our own personal journey with it, trying to compare how it felt to do certification versus recertification, because they are two very different things, and I'm having gone through it. In the certification phase, it felt very much like holding up a fragmented mirror, like the image there, because we knew our impact in parts, but when we pieced it all together, we were able to see the true impact and think, okay, we can do better than that in certain areas. So there was a lot of work to bring together that initial impact. And then looking forward to the recertification, we compare that to upgrading our own way of working. So we no longer have a cassette version at PTHR and we don't even have a CD, right? And we really improved and refined our operating model. And a lot of that has been due to having the BIA framework in the background. So after you do the B Impact assessment, that's not it. You're not B Corp certified. There's a lot more to do, actually. So there's the evaluation and verification stage, and that's when B Lab asks you for evidence. So for example, policies and procedures. Now, something that was really good is that it's adaptive depending on your size of organization. We are a non-hierarchical flat company. We don't have a bunch of documents in the background. We did need to create some, but quite often we already had the processes in place. They just weren't formalized. So what I thought might be useful to do is just highlight just a few of the practices that we had in our certification and also how we've refined them over the last 5 years. So going back to what Kata said about us being considered a low environmental impact organization, that doesn't mean we do nothing with our environmental impact. We take it seriously. And in fact, in 2025, we're going to look at firming up our greenhouse gas emissions accounting, and also looking, a lot more firmly at that. So what we did have, sorry, back of it, if that's looking at it, yeah. What we did have at the beginning of this journey is we had a sustainability strategy, and we had a higher level pledge to our planet that you can see here. And I'm sure it's okay for us to share these slides with you afterwards. So I won't go through all of this just now. But what we've been really intentional in doing is refining and updating this strategy year on year to show that our impact is going to get greater in this area. It's really important as well that there's an internal column that talks about our environmental impact, because otherwise it can be forgotten in business as usual. So what we've done over the last 5 years is we've shared what we've called a sustainability spotlight, and you can see a screenshot of that here every quarter with the team. And the structure is quite simple. We talk about the world and at macro level what governments are doing to actually meet net zero and all the big happenings that are going on. And then we also share a few examples of organizations that are leading the way and that we can draw inspiration from. And then the second part of it is how we as a team are meeting what's declared the sustainability commitments in our strategy. So we feel it's something that keeps that environmental impact piece alive and really creating a more sustainable culture. And on the next slide, a balanced life, that's absolutely key to our energy and well-being principle that I mentioned, even the self-determination one. And so when we set out on this journey in 2020, we were already a 4-day week organization, which is awesome because we're seeing more and more organizations take part in the pilots worldwide that we've seen over the last few years. And you can see some cutouts here on Perry in particular being a mentor for the 4-day week scheme that took place in the UK a couple of years ago. But since then, we've supercharged our commitments and what we give back to our team. So, for example, unlimited leave was introduced. We call that internally our life-friendly leave because we think that that's more apt to who we are. Last year, I was actually on maternity leave with my second child. And as part of that, I was very lucky to receive an enhanced maternity package, which is not something we had previously, but that's something that is explicitly defined in the BIA. So that also led us to gain more points. Our employee assistance program, we have that with ULife, and that's something that we've taken out more with as well, and that's connected to our well-being. So there's a gamified app that we have, and we all compete against each other to see who's walking the most and meditating the most. But it's become kind of integral to our culture to have these conversations. And then also, I think it was maybe 2021, and we took out a policy with a carbon neutral pension provider. So all really good stuff that's absolutely important to us, and we won't be changing that anytime soon. Something else that connects to the workers' impact area is career development that Kata mentioned. So one of our principles, learning as work, it's always been that way, but how do we actually bring that to life, and what evidence did we give B Corp in the evaluation stage? I think there's a screenshot of our learning mosaic. So what I will say is we do have formal external training and we have budget for that as well. But what we're actually quite big on is skill transfer within the team. I know this is a really colorful graphic, and hopefully it doesn't detract from what I'm trying to say. But what this depicts is our skills and capabilities within the PTHR team, and we use it to set up knowledge pairs. So, for example, Kata on self-management, I could speak to Kata and say, I really want to learn more about that. And vice versa, Kata could come to me and say, I'd love to learn more about sustainability strategies. But B Lab like this, and other clients we've worked with have also liked it. And this model in particular is actually inspired by Lumiere Schools, Ricardo Semler. But we wanted to share this because the evidence that you need to provide doesn't necessarily need to be hierarchical documents. It can be something a bit more adaptive. And accountability, so thinking more around that governance area, transparency is an absolute pillar to become a certified B Corp, as is decision making and how we keep each other accountable as an organization. So something that we've had since 2020 is a set of team agreements, so a social contract that we've co-created and shaped. So how we'll be accountable to each other. That has changed over the last 5 years. One of our principles, I think you can actually see it there in the middle, is exploration and curiosity. We're very explorative and very curious. So what we've done recently is we've connected our team agreements to these principles because we felt like it worked. But each year we actually create a pulse check survey to see, are we meeting these? Are we still accountable in these areas? If we are, great. If not, we'll refine them. And again, this is something we used in our supporting evidence to become a B Corp. I think there's, oh yeah, the impact reporting. So when you certify in between that limbo period, there's still work to be done. And that's through keeping up what you promised to do and iterating on it. But also B Lab actually ask you explicitly to create and share an impact report. So these three front pages are from 2021, 22, and 23. And Kata and I are in the process of writing our fourth impact report. What's really wonderful is you can access these actually. So you can access all the impact reports if you ask B Lab, and it's really inspirational to see what other organizations are doing, even if they're vastly different to who you are in terms of industry and size. Something I wanted to say about this is Kata and I have led on these, but they have been fully co-created by our team. So each member of the team has given a contribution, written a section based on the work that they do. And we very much think that HR in a large organization could lead on this, bringing together ambassadors who want to contribute to the impact report and even creating sustainability objectives within their KPIs and OKRs that are connected to the impact report also. I think there's one more thing to share right now, and that is the creation of ARC. So B Lab has actually shown through certified B Corps that they innovate more. And that's something that I've definitely felt at PTHR. I'm encouraged to innovate and think. And that's something that led to the creation of ARC in 2023. So ARC is our first spin out. It's still owned by PTHR, but I spend quite a lot of my time working with clients on this specific offering, and Kata does too. So our regenerative culture really believes that this sustainable mindset can be crafted throughout a whole organization. It can be co-created. So in the last 2 years, we've worked with teams to co-create sustainability strategies, run workshops where we bring in experts on certain topics, for example, circularity, to really demystify sustainability and ESG, and also coach and help organizations become certified B Corps. And with Kata becoming a B Leader last year, that's definitely given us extra credentials in this area.
And adding the partnership with Corina, I'm not sure if you wanted to mention that right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're absolutely thrilled to say that this year, hopefully onwards, we have partnered with Corina to bring all of this to clients in Romania.
Thank you very much for everything that you've said so far. Should I stop? Maybe you have one more slide.
This was just the final part with the conclusions. We just wanted to make some connections between what we said earlier about HR and OD getting involved, about B Corp not being just a certification, but an ongoing process, and really understanding that businesses can be profitable and can have a social impact as well. So, and as Kirsten mentioned, business as a force for good and better business for a better world. It's definitely in line, our mission with the B Corp's mission. So that's us.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I love it. And I really like the last things that you have written there, that better businesses for better world. What I also like is that at B Lab, they often say, don't strive to be the best in the world. the best company in the world. Be the best for the world. Be the best for your people, for the people you work with, for people that work for you. So try to leverage this to balance between your own growth as a company and money making, and also give something and create some impact to other parts of your business, other parts that are influenced by your business. And let's open up now the Q&A session. I see a lot of people here listening, but now it's time for you to ask questions, and I'm sure that many of you have interesting questions, or maybe you're curious about the B Corp certification, and we're here to answer. Let's see. Who wants to be the first? Everybody's shy. Okay, then, okay, Perry.
I'm happy to go into another area, actually, that maybe people don't realise. B Corps like to work with other B Corps. So out of the blue, I got a query from a film company in New York who wanted some HR advice and support. And they looked on the Beehive and the B Lab directory and decided not to choose any American HR provider, but a UK-based remote certified B Corp in the UK. So that was an interesting piece of work for me. And then a huge multinational in the automotive industry wanted to run some innovation events for their global teams. And so through a partner of ours who knew we did that sort of thing, we put our proposal in. And apparently being a certified B Corporation was almost the clinching part of our proposal compared to others, because it was all about their own sustainability agenda. And they thought they would probably be a little bit corrupt if they didn't choose a company that were already sustainably friendly. So I'm not saying that's the only reason we won that work, but there are two examples where being a certified B Corporation is actually a generator of interest and a potential deal clincher for organizations. So I think we can take a lot of comfort in that, that there is a real purpose to it beyond your own sense of morality and significance, that actually other companies are starting to think and see that there's a certain hallmark to a B Corporation that means something to them. So yeah, I just thought I'd add that.
Well, thank you very much, Barry. I often say similar things to companies here in Romania who are interested. Of course, we cannot compare with growing number of B Corps in UK, but in Romania, I always say when people ask me, about the B Corp certification and what do they get from it, I often laugh and say, well, you'll get the second brand. You get this logo, this second logo, which probably you have your own logo when you started a company. It represented what you are and what you do. But with this second logo of the certification, you actually put that stamp, in addition to your performance, to your operations, you put a stamp of sustainable and careful with the environment. So I actually want to ask you, Barry, since you were so kind to open up the Q&A session, what challenges do you see today on the market when it comes to organizations? What challenges you see? For example, I see from my perspective, employees' engagement seems like a big challenge for companies, although they give like 4 days work program, as you said, or maybe other incentives, but still engagement from an employee is difficult to get. Or maybe you see other trends or other challenges, and how do you think they can be solved?
You're right. There are a number of different frontiers, I suppose, that organizations are having to sort of tackle that they perhaps didn't before. I think the consciousness that's coming through, not just from younger people, but just people more generally turning their attention towards companies who do good. We see company reputations that can be shot to pieces overnight if they don't look after their people, if they abuse the planet, if they are overly profiteering and so on. So there are a lot of companies whose reputation, Google, Meta, it used to be like, I'd love to work there. Now people are going, that is an awful vibe you're creating. So I think there's something about B Corp's strength of integrity that passes all of those tests. So I think that's still emerging. I think there are still people who don't quite associate the B Corp logo with absolutely everything to do with integrity and purposeful, but it's growing, and I do see people making very conscious choices about where they want to affiliate based on that. I think there's some interesting things that B Labs have done globally. In the UK, there's a brewer called Brewdog, and there was a culture scandal with the founder, and there was a kind of letter of dissent from employees and so on, and they were B Corp certified. And B Labs investigated and withdrew the B Corp certification, even though that company sponsors a number of environmental issues. They said that is not what we want a B Corp to be. So I think anybody looking at B Labs and B Corp certification going, it's just another badge, I think that's starting to prove that it isn't, that there is real integrity to it. I've been inside employers who have ISO certification, who have investors in people, and they're still awful places to work who don't look after people. So there are lots of hallmarks that don't give you the strongest indication of the true integrity of an organization. But I think B Corp is different. I think it's so deep and it's so powerfully ingrained in things like UN SDGs that actually people go, that's a way that I know I can prove to the world that I've got morals, ethics, and commerciality. And I think that's really important. And I think when we're fighting on frontiers for competition in consumers, in employees, and just generally in reputation, I always look at B Corps and then just look at the vibe they have and the language they use. They've all got that sense of integrity. So I think there's something really powerful still about B Corp's growth and about its emergence. And I think its real significance is still yet to be materialized. So I think it's got pluses everywhere you look, I think, Karina, is how I would sort of summarize it. And it's a rigorous process. It's hard to get. And that's the point of it. It's not an easy badge to attain. You have to work really, really diligently, which Kata and Kirsten did, in order to get that absolute proof that you are what you say you want to be and aspire to be.
And Perry, I know you mentioned long-term growth of B Labs, and aptly today, B Lab UK has come out with their long-term strategy. So reading it word for word, their overarching goal: within 10 years, we want all UK businesses to act as a force for good by default, operating for the benefit of all their stakeholders. So that's bold, that's big, and that's saying that business is going to change.
Yeah, totally agree.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Definitely. I could see from the list of your clients, there were two UK governmental organizations. I could see the Department of Foods and Rural Affairs and the Ministry of Justice. Did you help them change redesign their organization?
Not so much.
How did you do this?
Not so much. I used to work in what is now the Ministry of Justice. I spent 20 odd years as a civil servant there. That was working with HR teams. That was working on things like organization design, employee value proposition, learning and development. So we do tend to work a lot with those kinds of organizations just to bring our particular flavor on their own employee experience and impact. But increasingly, the work that Kirsten and Catalina are doing is linked much more to organizations' specific desire to go through the B impact assessment process and become a certified B Corporation. So if you want, we've sort of expanded what we do. We've got that core, but that core can also be distinct in its own right and go straight into the sustainability agenda. I don't think we've got that much influence that we can shape government departments. In fact, they are still really frustratingly big and cumbersome and slow and hierarchical to work with. But we do our best, certainly, to enable HR teams to have more impact.
Yeah, that's wonderful, because I was going to ask you for some advice for the Romanian government, but maybe at a later time, because now we go through some difficult changes. Yeah, but if you have some tips
next year
for this next year.
Yeah, next definitely. Year we'll sort that with you next year. Yeah.
Okay, good. Some other questions. I'm looking also in the chat to
I think
check.
Ramona has a question.
Please go ahead.
Sorry, I forget to raise my hand in the proper tool in Zoom. Lovely to see many of you here that I know. Lovely to meet you, Corina. Congratulations, first of all, for all of your work, and thank you for sharing it with us today. I have questions and comments ever since I was a little girl. So I've tried to organize myself. One of my questions, which in partly Tim Perry, sorry, already answered, was I wonder how is this evaluation done so that companies and people applying for it, unwillingly so in time, get very good at mastering the language and answering very well the questions. I find that it's sometimes almost unavoidable. It's not per se ill intent, but it's a tendency that we have, especially with all of these helpers around us, ChatGPT and right things that really are able to skim through. I'm sorry, I come from a country where everything has to be questioned in terms of integrity. So that's one. I don't know if it's a question for you, but it's something I was pondering while listening to how all of this process goes on. I was drawn to the idea, and it was a lovely choice of a picture, Kirsten, with a mirroring, with a broken mirror, because your journey actually was a journey of discovery while you had a chance to improve and put things into place, so to sort of flesh out your core that you already had, which if a certification program enables you to do that, that is already a plus. So it's not just a dry cut, you have to fit in this box, and if you're not. So that would be a plus on the side of how can you make it not, how can you foolproof it so that it cannot be rigged by the very intent to be very good at applying for it. And the question was, do you establish any like peer-to-peer conversations during the process of applying for certification with other companies? Are there, I don't know, networking opportunities to get support, or did you work alone? Did you have some support other than the proper support? Probably you had a place where to ask questions. Yeah, things like that. I'll stop at this one to listen for somebody else. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ramona. And yeah, very relevant thoughts and insights. I'll pick up on that last question that you mentioned around the process and how it was for us. So we basically did all the research ourselves. So we started looking into what it means to get the certification. There are a lot of resources online from B Lab. And as Kirsten and I mentioned, we led the process, but we did involve everyone in the team for certain areas, and everyone had an input into the whole journey. And I think that was really valuable because it really created this sense of adding all the perspectives to the process. So yeah, on that last part around the process, I think for us it was quite straightforward, but we did do it ourselves because we were also interested in learning all the details about the process, like how do you do it for different companies as well.
And Ramona, the reflections that you had, thanks so much for them. Just to make sure that I understand, the one around integrity was your thought around the integrity of the actual process and the BIA. Is that what you were reflecting on?
Yeah, no, what I wonder is that however they are keeping all of this together, because while companies learn, it's like when you have standardized testing,
Mm-hmm.
at some point people get really good at being very good at giving the right answers.
Sure. Yes,
So
you
then
said,
how do you differentiate? Can you really look at the fabric that stands
sure.
behind the words of what it is that that business actually does on a day-by-day basis?
Sure.
So
So
yeah,
perhaps AI might help, actually. I don't know what B Lab's plans are for that, but perhaps that might come into
yeah,
play. But
yeah.
yeah, greenwashing is certainly something that they want to avoid. And Perry's example around Brewdog was a good one because they were a real heavy hitter in the community and they said, no, we don't need you. You're not sticking to what you've said you do. You will go. So I think taking a stance like that is going to prove important going forward. But we do actually know that B Lab are soon to be rolling out a new process. So they have looked at it and thought things need to be a bit tighter around here. So I believe how it's going to change in a nutshell is there's going to be different sets of questions depending on the size of business. And there's a bare minimum and there's kind of a benchmark. So they have realized that they do need to make it a bit more foolproof, if you like. And Kata and Karina, is it this year they're rolling that out or is it next year?
Yes, yeah, I think it's this year. And also, what I wanted to add is that you can get really good at answering the questions, but then you need to show proof for everything that you're saying. So the fact that they're really checking in detail everything that you're saying is really important because also, as Kirsten mentioned initially, we didn't have like, because we were a small team, we didn't have everything mapped out. We were doing some things like implicit agreements between us, but they wanted for us to create specific documents to kind of formalize what we were doing to make it explicit and prove that we have documents to support what we're saying. So I think in that direction, you can get really good at answering, but my impression is that B Lab is doing like extra efforts to catch those organizations that want to just show a surface level.
Mhm. And hopefully they will be able to keep the balance between keeping this process inviting enough for organizations of all sizes, while increasing, as Kirsten was explaining, with whatever they're rolling out this year, more foolproof in terms of while associated with banning out of what we don't need to be representing us. Yeah, hopefully. Thank you.
Yeah, we also believe that, I mean, I also had a look at the changes they want to address, and now it's a little bit maybe, so now what we can do in the BIA is that sometimes at some areas you maybe score higher, as Catalina, for example, showcased the 3 top areas where they score higher, while maybe the environmental side they scored lower because, as she said, we don't have a physical office, or we don't have a lot of emissions. So yeah, as a consultancy, you don't have too much to do with the environment except that you work somewhere with a laptop or more laptops, and everything you do, it's remote somehow. But in the future, these changes will, as also Kirsten said, will introduce a minimum bar. So if you don't reach that bar, then you cannot really fulfill that score. And if you don't have that score and you have the score achieved in other areas, then you're lacking on that one and you cannot go further. I think if I look for Romanian companies, and by the way, I'm happy to say we have some Romanian companies that have undergone this process, but yet not certified. They're still in the process. I think that for them, the way how BIA was set up to now was good because they also, for example, many of them lack on the environmental stewardship, on the biodiversity, and conservation resources, because they did not measure that. They didn't even measure their emissions because they never asked what is our emission. And I'm not talking about consultancies. I'm talking also about manufacturing companies that have went through this process. But they never were asked to have this data, so they never measured. So how was BIA for them is that they also scored higher in some parts, like they did a lot for the community. So they had beautiful community projects and community investment to showcase. They also had a good governance. They also had a good maybe customer approach and customer centricity, but they lacked on the environmental side to prove that they are more careful to the environment. They know their emissions. They have some plan to decarbonize and things like that. In the future, I think it would be harder for local companies. They would have to do some implementation before starting the B impact assessment, just to be able to raise to the bar. I think starting next year, 2026, we will see this in place, and then we will see how they can go through the certification. But as I also mentioned, for my clients that I have in Romania, I always promote the B impact assessment as a very good tool. And as Catalina said, it's even free. So you as a company with a small team can start going there and do it if you want without any help. It's a very good tool, like a diagnosis. You see from the way how the company structure up to the way how company delivers what comes in as impact, what goes out as impact towards, the greater environment. And then you see where you are behind. Then you see where you are maybe good or even the best. And you can create an action plan from that. And this is what I see with many smaller companies that are not ready for B Corp yet. Perhaps they also are not ready for the financial implication that means to have a certification, but they are willing to have a diagnosis. They want to see how they stand, and they are using it as a very great tool. And whatever comes out of that is then the topic for the next discussion. So I really like the fact that as a tool is very good, and this can be the first step into knowing what you have in a company, what you don't have, and start acting on that. So I hope I could be helpful with my addition. And thank you very much for your comment, Perry, here in the chat. Yeah, it's, as you said, very rigorous. You have to provide evidence for everything. So as you mentioned before in one of the slides, you work with underserved organization. You even mentioned you work with a lot of NGOs. Yeah, so a consultancy, an HR and organization design consultancy that helps also NGOs, design their workforce, let's say. And you have to prove, you have to demonstrate. They ask you for what's the name of this NGO, what did you work, how many hours of training, what was the result. So it's not only that you can say, hey, we have this list, but actually you can prove, demonstrate how you work with them, what sort of revenues, what's the level of revenues you did if you work with them. If you volunteered, then you didn't have the revenues, but you had a lot of time. And Catalina said at least 5% of our time, working time, we want to pledge and to use for volunteering work. So it's not little, it's actually a lot. So it's very rigorous, Ramona. I hope I convince you to try this exercise maybe in the future.
Yeah. My challenge was not in terms of the rigor of it, but in terms of a more philosophical and long-term impact of what's ahead of us. But time will tell. Thank you. I think Anna has her hand raised.
Please go ahead.
Hi, I hope you can hear me because I see that my connection is also very bad. So if you cannot hear me, then I will type my question. Is it okay? Can you hear me fine?
Yeah.
Okay, super. So I heard the answer to my question, and the answer was yes. So, but I want to see once more and to hear it a more definite answer. So, did it worth? The question is for the PTHR. So, did it really worth the all this going through all these formalities? From the, you were saying that you were making donations and you were doing a lot of things before, but because of the B Corp certification, you had to bring proofs, to formalize. And I know that it can be really a pain to all this, going through this bureaucratic process. But I would like to know if it's really worth, and if it, not that only it worth, that if it really helped you to develop your business or to go to another level with your business.
Thank you, Anna. I can start answering, and then someone else can can contribute if I'm missing something. But I would say that for us, it was really valuable to understand that what we're doing matters so much, and to measure that impact. Because again, even if we were doing it before, it was because we wanted to help. We wanted to help organizations that needed our support. And the fact that we formalized this and we started tracking and seeing how much is it and can we keep up with this commitment long term, was really useful for us. And that also means that we're basically tracking everything, and that's one of the self-management principles, that you track everything to understand what you're doing and how you're doing and how you can improve. So this way we also know how much we're spending to deliver a specific project. So even if we are a consultancy, we know exactly how much time and budget we're spending to deliver a different project, how much time and budget we're spending to deliver internal initiatives. And this way, on the long term, we know how to budget somehow our energy. So we don't work in the like traditional way of budgeting resources, like financial resources, but more looking at in the following years, how do we want to balance out these buckets somehow, our pro bono work, our client delivery, our internal initiatives, what do we want to develop in general. So
Thanks, Catalina.
I'll add to that, because we won some work with a company that operates in the sustainability world, because they help translate EU directives into supply chain monitoring, and as an example, right, that's what they do. And again, they came to us for us to help them with their OD. So largely it was around career progression and structure and flow and so on. What I think was really evident in my work with them is that the time and attention that we'd placed in formalizing what we do both helped me in an advisory capacity with them, but also it was almost a sort of a prove that we were a very serious organization who had matured and formalized in all the right ways. So they took us more seriously, I think, because we had devoted time to tracking things like our voluntary input and our sustainability pledges. So that was important to them, because they could see the ethics and the morality and the business practice that we'd put in, even if we're a tiny outfit. And that helped them convince themselves we were the right people to do that work with them. So I think, again, it's a strengthening thing. And I think we as an organization, when we advise people now, we're not just telling other people what to do and we're not doing it ourselves. We are actually being stronger ourselves to then advise other people. The fact that we came out in our initial B Labs assessment as being top 5% governance in the world was a massive surprise to us. But it kind of helped us go, wow, this is actually a good thing, to be really tight on governance and to be really almost for it to be a non-bureaucratic but really formalized extension of your aspirations, dreams and wishes is actually a really nice thing, Anna Marie. So we don't look at it as bureaucracy. We genuinely look at it as a sense of how we measure our impact and value. So I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ferry. You gave me a different perspective now. I mean, I knew that for big companies it definitely matters, but now you show me how it matters for a small company. Yeah. And thanks a lot.
Okay.
Sorry, Corinne.
No, everything's fine. Let's see if we have any question in chat. We have many thanks from people that had to go. So maybe one last question from my side. What's the secret of PTHR? You're a great organization, as far as I could see. You have a special sauce. What's the secret? What's the special sauce that led you to be like this?
I will take the Fifth Amendment on that one and won't answer. I'll leave that to Kata and Kirsten.
Okay.
Kata, I can go first, and perhaps you can add to it with a different perspective.
Go ahead.
For me, it's that we really practice what we preach. And I think working with HR and people teams, we can't say that we're doing good OD or doing good cultural practices if we're not embodying them ourselves. So by going through the B Corp process, we're able to see how we measured up against that. And yeah, I guess what's the saying? Talking the talk and walking the walk. I do believe we do that at PTHR.
Thank you. Catalina. What do you think is a special sauce?
I would add that is this power of co-creation and collaboration and the way we've organized everything together collectively. And of course, Perry is the source of this enterprise, and the fact that he allowed this space is the ingredient, the key ingredient, I would say. But then the power of the collective of everyone in the team, source and sauce. But yeah, like having everyone contributing, and as you were talking earlier, Corina, about like employee engagement and why are people disengaged, I would say is like the fact that we have the space of actually contributing and bringing to life what we want to see. Like Kirsten was mentioning about her passion around sustainability and being able to create a spin out of PTHR. So it's not a core business, but it's something that we do on the side. And right now it contributes quite a lot to our day-to-day operations. So really diversifying and bringing everything together, I really think that's a key aspect of this magic that we see at PTHR.
Yeah, definitely unique. Thank you very much, everybody. For Perry, do you want to add something?
May I add something, please?
Yes, please.
I just realized something while Catalina and Kirsten were talking, and you know, sometimes I meet with these successful people, like successful business leaders, and they want to prove that they are successful. I don't know. So, but when you look at them physically, you see that they are not really successful because they are super stressed. You look at their eyes, so you look on themselves that they are not well. There is no well-being. There is no good business there, so not really successful. And if I look to this to the team of PTHR, you really look at them and you see that they are well, so they really do what they are saying, and there is no other proof. I don't know, like looking at all of you guys, you look amazing, and it's really visible that you take care of yourself, and yeah, you are doing what you are preaching.
That's really
Congrats.
nice. Thank you, Anna Maria. I would just like to add that I think people have got leadership all wrong. It isn't about heroic acts and about assuming the sole vessel of power. It's too difficult for one person to do. So the best form of leadership is to disperse it. And that's exactly what we've done. We've just said there's no need to have one figure leading this thing. We just all lead it. So leader full is the way forward.
Thank you. Thank you for this last words of wisdom. Well, I see that the time is gone by, but very pleasantly, and I even didn't look at the clock before. Thank you very much, everybody, for taking time and being present today for this webinar, this amazing chance to meet the people of PTHR. I hope that we will be able to stay in contact. I hope that in the future we will be able to collaborate and bring PTHR magic to other companies that are looking for authentic and successful organization design or people management or whatever they are delivering. I'm sure it's going to be wonderful and successful, as they already proved so far. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for your questions, and I'm looking forward to meet you again in other webinars. Thank you and enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care.